Hello and welcome to another episode. Today we're going to talk about collaboration as a value. Today you're going to find out how you can collaborate with somebody who have totally different opinions and who doesn't share your thoughts. So stay with us and find out more. Welcome to our new episode. Welcome to Milena Vibes with my two favorite guests, Lancaster and Louisa Bulow. And today we're going to talk about collaboration as a value. Louisa, can you tell us the definition from Rivale 180 about collaboration?
Yeah, so collaboration is to cooperate and work well with others.
Like we do.
Well, we do collaborate well, actually. Collaboration, I think that word is interesting because it gets kind of lost in the narrative sometimes. I think that people think I can't be assertive if I'm collaborative, and I can't be, so that's where I think collaboration's it's a border value, correct? Is it a border value? No, it's
in global vision.
It's in global vision, but as you rate them, because the model is all built in maths, it goes outer towards the outer edge because it gets closer and closer to openness. I think collaboration is a tough one for a lot of powerful leader types who believe that, their word should be the last word. And I think that the best leaders probably know how to collaborate the best because they know how to bring people together, share thoughts and opinions. And I think that's just a big word, a buzzword that we try to kind of teach our children from when they're small. I mean, even when they're first starting to play with their toys, and then they have a sibling who they can't stand, so they're like stepping on their sibling or trying to like hurting them when mom or dad is not looking. And then when they go to school, and I think that's why there's a lot of like role play kind of in those young years when we're first learning that valuable skill of collaboration. That's how I would introduce it.
I think it's just inherent to humans. We're pack animals, right? We used to hunt collaboratively in order to survive. So there's a part of us that almost needs to collaborate. And there are people on that scale who are therefore more independent than others. But in order to take down a mammoth, say, we can't do that on our own. We need to be able to have other people with us to strategize, to problem solve, and then to ultimately make the kill. So I think it's something that's probably we still carry with us. I mean, if you look at societies, when people move to somewhere they don't know, they typically will move to an area where there's some of their culture. Say in London, there's different pockets of London where there are different cultures, there are people from different countries. I know my sister's Spanish, so when she moved to the UK, she joined a Spanish society on Facebook and then hung out with that just to help her feel more comfortable as well. So I think it's an inherent part of us.
I mean, it's interesting because I think that if you're going to look at like, what is it, that epistemology, I'm not sure if that's the right word, but if you look at the definition or the meaning of it, I think that one would believe that Europeans, because they're collectivist societies, are more collaborative than Americans because we're more individualistic societies based on capitalism versus socialism. I think that would be such an interesting sociological study because I actually think that once I went to school with Europeans, I think Americans actually like to collaborate more in some ways in a work setting. They're really interested in like arguing out their thoughts and ideas. And I think that was something I was a little much sometimes for people like,
I think that was a confidence thing too. I think Americans inherently have a lot more confidence and they're taught that in school. So actually from people I know, so you're more comfortable doing that. And I agree with you because being on the same course as you, it was a bit like some people really didn't want to say anything. And we had people from all over Europe on the course.
Yep. We did. I think it was like 22 countries or something. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. But I mean, those are broad generalizations. If I'm just bringing it home and back to like my own experiences with it. But essentially, if you're going to speak about like tribes hunting and collaborating in order to feed themselves, then I think that's a very good point. But it's just interesting that I wonder if collaboration actually goes hand in hand with collectivism in a sense. I don't know, that they're interesting words. I think they have overlap, but not necessarily the same words, but I'm not sure. You know what I mean? That'd be an interesting dissertation for a sociological student. So anyways.
But the thing is,
okay, Louisa.
Sorry, I was just going to say our definition is to cooperate and work well with others. So there's being able to be around one another, but actually to work well, to activate collaboration as a value. I know for me, it's so important. I always grew up, I think in the UK as well, sport is in schools is a big thing, team sports though specifically. So I know in the US there's a lot more things like track and athletics. We don't do that as much. It's more like the football and the netball and the rugby teams. And I learned that straight away and I enjoyed that. And a big part of my growing up was being in teams. And I think you learn how to work better, you learn how to problem solve, and you learn how to strategize, and knowing that your opinion isn't the only one. So
well, yeah, I mean, America, it's really the same thing. I mean, yes, there are individual sports. I mean, that just comes down to, once again, I think, kind of socioeconomics. Like there's tennis, that's individual track. But I think that if you don't play a sport in America, then you're not, like, it's sad. You have to play a sport and play an instrument and be best in your class. And so, I mean, we need Renee on here because I think the Chinese will rival the Americans with a lot of
for
like,
sure.
having to be involved in everything. But yeah, I do agree. Sports are a really great way of thinking of playing like a team member. It's not about me. In fact, a lot of the advice we issue in the feedback reports is the idea of we versus I. And collaboration is very important. And we do really see that people who sit heavily in personal empowerment and regulation struggle sometimes with that. And that's a piece of advice that goes with kind of a cluster of values that fall into global vision. I imagine, I'm fairly certain collaboration is one of them. I don't know the cluster off the top of my head. However, that is really the important thing, is the focusing on the we versus I, and being able to surround yourself. I think when you collaborate as well, I think the best collaborators are those that surround themselves with people who are smarter than they are, maybe not smarter than they are in their particular niche area, but a good team leader wants to collaborate with people who know more than they do on different topics in order to make a good team. But we'll let you ask your question. Sorry, Milena.
No problem. I was just thinking because when I was thinking about collaboration, I was thinking about how it's easy to collaborate when you have people who have like same goal, they have same salaries and they work together. There is no jealousy between them. But because I'm working in commercial real estate like a broker, and between us, okay, now I'm working with my husband. Of course, I'm not jealous about him, and what he's making, because that's all our money. But when I used to work in like, like greater, bigger corporation, I can feel that sense of jealousy because we don't have salaries, so we are commission based, and it was fighting between us. But also we are on the same umbrella, so we need to work, we need to collaborate. But
yeah,
how would you say it now as a CEO, or Louisa as a business psychologist? What would you recommend? How they can fix that to, like, a CEO? What you can do that you can change, and then you can,
well, that's a great question. What's great about that is that's kind of what we argue why people should even buy our model, because we can, especially with hybrid work teams, that when they share values, like you just said, when you're kind of like working for the same end goal, that's where all the research sits. Value-focused teams who share similar values, people who are just value-driven and happier, produce more. It's really the underpinnings and the genesis of our entire model. So I think as a CEO, I think that there's a higher purpose. Yes, you might be competing, especially I know in my husband's world, they all work for the same hedge fund, but in the inner of the hedge fund, they're kind of all their own little fiefdoms. Lawyers, the same thing. So they're out there still not necessarily competing directly with their neighbors, but they're trying to be, have, the highest profit and loss for the year. And, lawyers are trying to have the highest billable hours for the year or the most client billings. So, but there's got to be a layer above that. And it's kind of like the same message we do with DEI. It's good when we can kind of rise above, like with diversity, equity, inclusion, with kind of our competitive spirits, and say, okay, but what do we have in common? We share many of the same values. We share many of the same kind of behaviors or activities that kind of echo those values. So I think it's taking one step above, and hence why the model works so well, to unite teams and to unite organizations. So I think as a CEO, I would hire Revaluate 180, hopefully.
I would recommend. Louisa,
Not to plug it, but I mean, there's other things, obviously, but anything that kind of can bring them out of maybe the day-to-day and remember that, you know, Richard or Saeed or someone across the office is not, you know, you think you have nothing in common, but actually you're both very heavy in openness and you both rock climb. So that's interesting because that creates bonds. That creates collaborative bonds, because when people share similar thoughts and ideas, aspirations and wishes, then they're going to be more likely to be positive with each other and rooting each other on and collaborate and working well together, I think.
There's got to be an awareness as well. You bring different strengths. So like what Tia's saying, you've got to understand what we do is we give you a language to work with. That's one of the most powerful things that our model can do. There's a way that you can communicate and understand that actually, if I'm heavy in openness, someone who's heavier in regulation, or that's their heaviest zone, is my opposite in terms of values and drivers. And that's great, because actually we can share, and I can share my creative, innovative, if I'm the openness person, thoughts, and they can bring me down and say, actually, right, how can we put this in place? So where's that structure around that? And being able to collaborate between opposing zones who really do have conflicting values. And if you're really heavy in those zones, you don't really understand the other person.
No,
you don't
I mean,
really understand where they're coming from. It's a bit like, whoa.
But the joy, if those aren't your heaviest zones, as we know with the model, sometimes you spend a lot of time in a zone that has only just a couple prioritized values, and that might be a similar zone to the other person. And so, I mean, you don't know, that's just the exploration process, but that's absolutely very
accurate. You find that commonality, and then you use our language to be able to communicate in a way that therefore is not judgmental. And that's how you can end up, even if there are extraneous factors like pay and all these kind of things happening. Actually, if the goal is to climb Everest, the goal can be the same, but a team that's very heavy in openness is going to attack it in a very different way to a team that's heaviest in regulation. So we need to share, we need to understand who we have and how we get there. And that's what the values do. And that's what they can unlock for us.
Definitely hope we have some regulators who are watching out for the weather and everything else climbing Everest. But yes, that's a very good explanation.
I don't know, do you remember, but I used to work for Rishi's company for a really, really smart lady. I think now she's retired, but she had a really amazing approach, because okay, we were commission based, but we have like a small salary just to pay our bills, just to be calm that we can, you know, go to work and pay bills and everything. Yeah. And then so the goal was like 1,000 clients per year, and she put like, if somebody of us reach that number, we're gonna get like 13 salary, you know, and we're gonna spend like really nice holidays, and maybe we can travel or something. And I remember last like December, we would fight for Louisa, for example, so she can reach. And we were really good, like, Louisa, you can do it. Like, we would buy her coffee, cupcakes, you know, like, Louisa, can I massage you? You know, like, can you call this guy?
I love that.
Yeah. So she made it like, so yeah, in December, like really, really team, like we were team working. But all of 11 like months, you know, before, we were like, I hate that girl, I don't like her, you know. But when we have the same goal, I'm here.
Yeah, exactly. Because then you know how hard that person's working, and you know, like, wow, and you know that like a big part of it's luck as well. So you're like, shit, well, I'm working as hard, but maybe it's not my time yet. So my time will be next time. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a skilled leader, though. I think that when you have a leader who can, kind of encourage those behaviors and get people to work well.
To rally for the other person. A very wise woman once told me, it was you, Tia. You said in our masters, actually, you said you have to shed your ego. And I've always remembered that phrase. And I think in order to collaborate, it sits in global vision for a reason. You're helping the wider impact of your actions. You have to shed your ego. You have to accept that this isn't about me right now. And actually, to get a better quality of work, I need to listen to other people's opinions. I need to do an audit. I need to understand what's going on, because I'm not always right. And shedding your ego is, I bring something to the table. I bring my own strengths, but actually I'm missing a lot. I have my blind spots, and I need someone else to fill those for me. And if you can accept that, you can actually be much better at collaborating.
And that's very true. And thank you I'm glad that stuck with you. That's kind and also funny. But I also think that, yeah, I think that my husband, who's been a fearless leader amid like the Wall Street finance world for a long time, I think he always says that the best collaborators are those who know their highest best use. So similar. It's kind of like, I know what I'm good at, know what I'm not good at. And that's exactly kind of what you were just saying, Milena. Okay, I had a good year, but this guy really kicked it out of the park. And, I'm going to rejoice in this because maybe it's me next year. He's really good at something that I'm not as good at. Like he's a better closer. I can bring a lot of people. Who knows what it is? I mean, but right now we're talking to this woman, Lori Ann is her name, and she's she's like a career saleswoman. So it's hard for me sometimes having discussions with her, and she actually pointed this out, that it would be hard because I'm kind of having to retreat and take steps backwards where over ground that I feel as if it's been like done and dusted in a sense. But she knows how to sell. I try to sell with too many words. So I think that's all kind of the collaborative process.
Yeah, no, of course, you just wanna, like, I think if you wanna go to, I'm not gonna cut my hair. I'm gonna go to the hairstyle. I'm gonna, like, I'm gonna hire somebody who is doing better than me, so I don't need to think about that, and I can focus what I'm really good at. Like, so why would I even? Okay, you try, you see that it's not good. Honestly, I don't feel like a good salesman. Also, when I was in insurance, I was like, listen, if you need this, if you don't need, don't call me. I was like, so, and everybody's like, you need to buy, you need this, love your family,
Need to close. It's
yeah,
like,
clothes, like how did you sleep, how do you sleep without insurance and everything. But I was like not pushy at all. I was, I was terrible.
yeah,
I make money, but it was like only because people were like, okay, she's not pushy. But how many people doesn't like people who are not pushy? It was
right. I mean, you
no.
made money because people grew to like you.
Yeah. They were like, okay, this is a good product, I'm gonna buy it. Only those people are closer. But people who I need to convince them, they were like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I think it's really obvious when you work in a group or a team specifically, and there's someone who isn't collaborative. And I think they really do stick out like a sore thumb. They don't want to be there. They don't want to listen to other people's opinions. And I think anyone listening can understand or have experienced that, even if it's at university when you have to do group work and someone just doesn't want to collaborate, doesn't want to be a part of the collective, and how frustrating that feels, and how much it then changes the energy of the group, right? And then you can't focus on what you're doing. So you're too focused thinking on the person who's actually not wanting to take anyone else's opinions and work together. And I think it's such an issue in teamwork when you have someone who does not think collaboration is helpful, thinks they know better. And yeah, I think everyone's experienced that. It's interesting, our blocker that blocks it in personal empowerment is tag. And this is the blame blocker. So tag, you're it. So you blame the mistakes on other people or other circumstances. So I have tag, and I know I have tag. And I also know that collaboration is a value I can block with it because I prioritize that. And I can feel that conflict. I love being in teams. I love helping. I love hearing. But then the minute something goes wrong, there's a part of me that inherently wants to go, okay, well, whose fault was that? And it's like, Louisa, think about this.
Well, it's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, tag's interesting. And I love that. I've had a lot of people like, that was the greatness part of naming these blockers, is coming up with these cheeky names. We've said it before, we say it again. I like it that it's somehow people aren't afraid or embarrassed to choose that, because I think that in tag, sometimes you're it. You know what I mean? We all but blame people for things that we are as much to blame as maybe they are. So I think that's, maybe it's not something we do every day, and if we didn't choose it, but it's definitely when honed, because we talk about how when you hone these blockers and someone's aware of it, that they have this tag blocker, they're going to be an extra. I think once they've identified that, they're going to be an extra better team member, because they're going to be like, oh shit, yeah, no, I got to make sure, what was my play in this? How can I fix what I did wrong?
And it's interesting because for me specifically as well, bringing it to life, I guess, tag blocks collaboration, which I prioritize, but it also supports independence, which is one of my final values, which I don't think can ever go. A lot of people will say to me, that's one of your things, you're so independent. to my own detriment at times. So sometimes tag is really helping me with my independence, because I'm like, wasn't my fault. Off I go. On to the next thing.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Exactly. Wasn't me. And then
shout out.
and then other times it really gets in the way. So it's just really interesting how collaboration and independence, for me specifically in my profile, definitely sit as conflicting values. And tag is what's anchoring those together.
They're causing that tension. Exactly.
How can Rivality help? For example, if you have a company and you can do like report for whole company, you can see what they prioritize, what their values. And then I would say I'm most interested in sales, because I don't know why, but the whole life I'm in sales, even if maybe it's not my favorite place to be, but I'm familiar with that. So we have a company where is sales people are like probably prioritize power, independence, like freedom, they're their own bosses, empathy, so collaboration, so. So how can Rivality 180 help with that? What would you suggest if you know the list of values that they prioritize?
Well, that's funny. It's funny you say that, because we're preparing for like a pitch for a possible pilot with a really large organization right now. And we're talking about, even if they don't want to maybe pay at kind of normal levels, we want to do a diagnosis. So getting an organizational value blueprint or diagnosing the organization as a whole is great. I mean, we can even go via teams, via positions, and we can really see where are people sitting with their values. And when you get to look at their particular blockers on the particular team, how is this playing out with what Louise is saying? Do we have enough people kind of representing the entire atlas? And also, what do we look like as a company when every single person's data is put on top of each other and we can see this kind of heat map? I mean, it's basically the first step. It's the first step to finding that commonality, the first step to saying, okay, as a CEO, as a C-suite, as leaders, we want to collaborate with you. We want you as an organization to be stakeholders in this company. If we know what you value and we say it's important to us, and we even maybe want to come up with different kind of ways to spend days off or different comp time you might be spending, whatever it may be, we want to hear from you instead of telling you, oh, you need this, you need that, you're not doing this. So I think, to me, it's a great first step to really get a company as a whole to do this diagnosis, to get the pulse, to see if the company, how much of the company, what percentage of the company sits in global vision, what percentage of the company sits here. And if our entire sales force sits in regulation, we might have a problem. We might say, okay, well, we need some openness people. We need those people who are those big, bold personalities, in order to sell this product. And maybe that's why we want those people, because they're really pushing us forward and they're going to keep everybody on track. But it really helps to fill the spots. And then therefore we can go all the way back down and we can hire and curate talent. So we are building a value-based organization, being collaborative by doing this.
Louisa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say and then there's the organizational level, as Tia's explained, and then taking it down to almost like a team level. I think there's almost two things you can do. You can tell your people who is in the room, who do we have here, who's good at this, who's good at that, and then talk about it. So tell and talk, I would say. So if you know who you've got, I know that I love public speaking, I love presenting, I love helping people and delivering, and that's who I am. So okay, we've got this presentation tomorrow and there's not much time to do it. Louise, would you mind doing it? I know that's something that you enjoy. So that's going to help me because I enjoy it. I'm going to be more productive and put more effort into it, versus someone who wants to be behind the scenes and into the details and making my slides and making them look good, whatever it is. Let them do that. Let me do this, and know who's there, and then talk about it and own it, and use like I keep saying, our model will give you that taxonomy of language to do that.
And even beyond that, it gives us what we have with our co-founder, Renee, who developed all the mathematics. What we have, what other people don't have, is we have the maths. We have the quantifiable metrics to say, this group of you sits in this in this zone, and it might help you to overcome or hone your blockers, because we need more of this side of you to come out with your blind spots. And then you're going to really be that, that magic ingredient's going to come alive. So, I mean, we literally just did this with our big offsite. We were able to see trends. We were able to see what are the differences in where they sit in zones from an analyst to an associate to a managing partner level. And are there differences? I mean, we saw a lot of, like Louisa and I talked about, a face validity of a lot of just kind of the initial numbers that were jumping out at us. We saw that the Milwaukee office had like the highest percentage value chosen there was humor, but in London, it was challenge and honesty, because they were pretty tied. So that's interesting. I mean, that's like just cross-sectionally. Is that like cross-cultural? It's across an ocean. It's like, is it different? It's in the intensity of a London versus a Milwaukee? Is it the difference between Midwestern values versus city values? I don't know, but I mean, the sky's the limit. And if we can diagnose these things and have these numbers and have the maths show us the way, then how much easier it'll be to get the right teams that will be collaborative and work well together. You're right. Well,
thank you so much, ladies. And we're going to talk about next value, next episode. Stay with us and find out more if you want. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Milena.
Bye. Bye.